So, Wes Anderson is finally out with his newest movie, French Dispatch, and I finally got to see it last night. And yeah, it's French. It's Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson has always been one of my favorite directors. You know, next to Denis Villeneuve. You know, all those guys. He's been always consistently making really interesting, weird, quirky movies with weird characters and cool production design and epic cinematography, or super cool cinematography. And he likes to pay attention to like lots of just little details and stuff like that. And Fantastic Mr. Fox is one of my favorite movies of all time. Life Aquatic, Moonrise Kingdom, those are all bangers. Grand Budapest Hotel. For all of his like crazy, skills, whatever he does, it's a big inspiration to us, film guys. We all watch Wes Anderson movies and freak out. And so when we hear a new movie's coming out, we're like, 5 tickets. But this is a fairly low budget one compared to Grand Budapest Hotel, which is like a $35 million budget. This is $25 million. And so it kind of follows like a newspaper company, and they're like kind of publishing their like they're like looking back on like their 3 best like stories from like their top 3 writers at the company. And so it follows 3 really interesting stories, and you're kind of like exploring all these random different characters, and you see all these like cool production design stuff and interesting camera work that they do, and it's awesome. You sit there and you're like, bruh, give me more Wes Anderson. Like, this is just like a bunch of short films that are all like kind of like sort of connected, and it's like it really worked for me. Cinematography wise, he has like an ideal. He always shoots like this, or like that. He never shoots at like different angles. Occasionally he did that, which I thought was really interesting. In this movie he did different camera movements, with like turning. He actually did handheld once, which is really surprising. He doesn't do handheld, like shaky cam. He hasn't done that since like 2004. But like he's like over time developed such a unique style that like when you watch whatever he does, it's always going to be entertaining. It's always going to be interesting. It's always going to make you be like, bro, this is so cool. Like, his style is like, just like spew exposition. Characters just like say how they feel, and they stand like this, like weird emotions. And it's like, it's just so weird and cool and funny. And like, I loved everything about this movie. Also, I got to talk about the score for the movie. It's super simple. Alexander Desplat or something. He does a really good job with the score in this movie. It's like really detailed, very intricate, it's very Wes Anderson. And I loved it in every single aspect. The framing, composition, cinematography, colors. A lot of the creative choices in terms of cinematography was really well handled. And I think it was directed pretty well for the most part. He did some crazy stuff. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Cherry, where like in Cherry, the Russo brothers, they kind of went a little bit over beyond in terms of style, and that kind of ruined the movie a little bit. In this movie, he goes, but he doesn't break that border where it's like kind of confusing in the stuff he does. It's just more interesting. You're like, interesting, when he does these different creative choices. And so in this movie, I think it worked in terms of like doing weird creative stuff, doing weird like camera movements or cinematography stuff to like add to the story. This movie did that much better than, let's say, like something like Cherry. And I could learn from that. Like, every movie sort of sets up a tone, and once you like understand the tone, you can kind of just sit back and like just watch, because you understand what it's going to be like. And so, Wes Anderson has a vision for this movie. And like you first go in and you're like, okay, there's a lot of weird random stuff happening. But like once you realize where the story is going, or like what's actually like the concept of the whole movie, you could just sit there and just like basically take everything in and sort of just acknowledge and appreciate all these random characters and all these different stories that Wes Anderson himself came up with, which I felt like were so unique. So many stories that like were good. They were like good stories. I don't want to get into them. They were cool. They were really interesting. I think my only flaw with this movie was the fact that it was a low budget, and because of that, he had to make some decisions that I think sacrificed what he wanted to do for his vision. Like he had to compensate for lack of money by doing something in a certain way. And when you watch it, you'll see it, but it's like, it seemed like that was like the only moment where Wes Anderson wasn't able to do what he wanted to do in this movie because of like literally lack of money or like lack of studio, you know, backing him or something, you know. I thought that was kind of sad. I wanted to see that in like a Wes Anderson style, but instead we got that. I'm like being very vague, but like when you see it, you'll understand it. But like either way, like it still had the style of Wes Anderson. And, like overall, this is a great Wes Anderson movie. He does something really different that he normally doesn't do with his movies, but it's still all done in like the super Wes Anderson way that you'll just like you'll watch it, you'll be like, okay, this guy, this guy, and I loved every second of it. Like there's so much I can learn from this movie. I feel like, in terms of like directing and like low budget directing sort of idea. Such a cool, weird, cool guy. But definitely overall, I had a great time, and I want to give this movie a 9 out of 10. Like for real, I'm like feeling really good about this. Like, you can look at this movie and be like, bro, this movie was really trash. But then if you just accept what Wes Anderson is doing, what he's trying to do, and what he accomplished, you can realize like, oh, this is all on purpose, and it's actually pretty good. And that's basically how I felt about this. That's basically the conclusion I came up with for this day that I thought about the movie. You know, it's like, you know, good movie. I recommend it. Totally recommend it. Come into this movie expecting cool characters, cool, interesting stories, and then just focus on that. If you had a good time, that's all Wes Anderson was trying to do. If you felt emotions, that's all he was trying to do. But yes, check out French Dispatch in theaters. This movie actually has a really small release. I saw it came out on the 22nd, and I saw there was only screenings up until the 28th. So try to watch the movie before the 28th. It's going to be playing in like certain theaters at certain days and certain times, like really specific times. So like if you really care about watching this movie, if you care about Wes Anderson for some reason, watch it fast, like within the week, because I think it's gonna leave pretty soon. Like it'll probably come back occasionally, maybe rarely, but like I'm not too certain about that. So just be careful if you for some reason want to watch this movie. It's a good movie. I'll just tell you that, and it's one of my favorites of the year so far. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that video or this review. Let me know what else to review or what movies to watch or something. You know, like and subscribe to the channel. Check out my Camp 2021 recap. I spent a lot of time on that, even though, yeah, it's complicated, the story behind that. I'm gonna release a documentary about the process of making. No, I'm not. I'm not gonna do that. All right.